Hey there everyone, my name is Waffles the Asian Yenber and welcome to a not new series but with a new name, Leaders Explained, where I've done the research and the playtesting so you don't have to. Today I'm going to be giving you my updated OP-07 Nami list, which is based partially on the meta but with a lot of my own spice. If you've seen my EB01 Nami video, you already know that I tend to take a bit of a different approach to Nami than other players, as I like to make sure we're as consistent a deck as we possibly can be. If you are a brand new Nami player, I highly recommend checking out that video first because I go really in depth on how to pilot the deck. I'm not going to retrace a lot of those steps here as I'd rather just focus on how the deck changed in the meta. However, I am including a few games worth of gameplay in this video as it was requested a lot last time, and you can check out the timestamps in the description down below for those. Now, without further ado, roll the intro. For those who don't know, Nami is the only leader whose win condition is milling herself out, so any Nami deck is going to focus on getting through as many cards in your deck as possible as fast as possible. This makes her a bit more of a gimmicky leader as she plays drastically different than any other leader in the game, so Nami is catered to players who prefer having a strong defense, a deck with a lot of nuance, and players who have pretty thick skin, as there's a lot of people in the community that don't really like playing against her. She has a pretty low skill floor, but an incredibly high skill ceiling. Possibly one of the highest in the game, but I am pretty biased there, as she is my favorite deck. Because she's a gimmicky leader, a lot of the cards in the deck only work for her, and that makes them much cheaper. However, her outlook in the meta has never been the best. She is very weak to bottom decking, and while Sakazuki is now banned, Red Purple Law is the most popular deck in OP-07, and also in OP-08. This means that Nami players will face a lot of uphill battles. However, she does have the best matchup against Enel, so she is particularly good in yellow metas. The good news doesn't stop there though. As of OP-07, Nami is no longer restricted to just running the Impel Down engine. This set gives her two new searchers in Sengoku, who searches 7 Warlords of the Sea, and Grandma Nyan, who searches Kuja Pirates. This has led to 3 total variants. Kuja Pirates Nami focuses on getting to Love Beam quickly and using Margaret as a blocker. This makes her pretty good against opponents that swing tall like Katakuri, but worse against opponents that go wide like Zoro. Margaret is also a card with 0 counter, so this version is more prone to having dead cards in your hand. Warlords Nami runs 7-cost Crocodile and excels in matches where an opponent can't remove him. 7 Crocodile makes all your events cost 1 Dawn less, including the 1 Dawn events, making them free, so it tends to be better against decks that swing wide and allows for more aggressive plays like playing 2 Sanji's Pilaf in 1 turn. Impel Down Nami is also able to consistently use Deathwink and allows us to have All-Stars be searchable in the deck. And when it comes to stats, Kuja Pirates won 2 more tournaments than both Impel Down and Warlords, which tied at 4 wins each, that we know of, at least. However, would it really be enough if all we did was look at the meta and I gave you the most average deck that I possibly could? God, no. The deck I'm bringing you today brings all the best traits from all 3 decks in order to make your matchup versus any leader, except for Red Purple Law, as consistent as possible. Now I'm going to skip through the explanation of any of these core cards that were in the last video, so let's just run through them real quick. 4 Kaya, 4 Desert Spada, 4 Gum Gum Gavel, 4 Usopp's Rubber Band of Doom, 4 Sanji's Pilaf, 4 White Snake, 4 Deathwink, 4 Love Beam. However, there is a new card to address, Snake Dance. This is a 2-cost event that lets you bounce Kaya or any other character back to your hand and gives you plus 4,000 power. This is exceptional in the early game as it not only allows us to reuse Kaya, but it lets us avoid using the more important cards like Love Beam so we can save them for later on. Plus, unlike Overheat, your character does not need to be active to bounce them. Bouncing is also not a cost, just an extra effect, so you can still use this even if you don't have anything to bounce back to your hand. Thankfully, this also has a pretty life-saving trigger as well. By bouncing one of your own characters, and this is a cost this time, you can bounce one of your opponent's cost 5 or lower characters back to their hand. And we can use that in a variety of situations, but one of the most helpful is against Red Purple Law. By adding this to the deck, we have a way of bouncing Kaya without having to run any dead cards like Brickfist. However, while this card is wonderful, it is not your top priority, and it is okay to discard if needed. If you don't have a character to bounce on your field, it is just an extra 4,000 counter power, which you should take into account when you compare it to something like Gum Gum Gavel or Love Beam that's also going to get cards out of the deck. This is a core card and it is strictly better than Overheat in the meta, as Red Purple Law is going to run a lot of 4 cost and above characters, and Overheat isn't going to let us bounce those. Mr. 1 is also a character I consider a core card as he lets us add Gavel back to our hand, but in the red-purple law matchup he's a liability if you play him and only a 1k counter card if you don't. We don't rely as much on the 1-cost cards in this version of the deck, and we aren't running a way to search him out, so I have reduced him down from 4 copies to 2. But now let's get into the tech cards. First off, we are running 7-cost Crocodile. In matches where your opponent doesn't run removal, he is essentially a win condition. While he won't be doing much for us in the black matchups, he greatly boosts our win rate versus green decks and yellow decks like Bonnie, Yamato, Katakuri, and is a massive help versus Zoro. We're only running him at 2 copies because he's situational, but he has a 1k counter, so he won't be an obstacle for controlling our hand size, which if you remember from the last video, that is extremely important. Next up is 2 Boodle, and I cannot take credit for this idea. This comes piggybacked off of Urameshi or at One Piece Osaka, who I'm going to link down in the description, but basically you run Boodle because of Black Yellow Luffy. In that matchup, we would normally have to take the boosted leader hits, but Boodle blocks and drops a card, which saves us a life. On top of that, he's also an easy turn 1 play against anything that won't immediately bottom deck him, as you can just block the first hit, save the cards in your hand, and drop a card from your deck. He's great value, but again situational, which is why we're only running 2. Now I talked a lot about Belmare in the last video, but it is really important, so I'm going to go over her again. Against an opponent that cannot bottom deck her, which is only Red, Purple Law and Boa in this meta, and I guess occasionally some of the other blue ones, but those are techs, but mainly Red, Purple Law and Boa, against anything else, she is going to put our opponents into a lose-lose situation. She has the same ability as Zeph, so if she deals damage, you mill 7 and that pretty much secures you the game. However, instead of having Zeph's on-play effect, she has an on-KO effect to mill 3. She also costs 1 less. What that means is for 4 Dawn, we get to mill 3 cards at minimum. That is pretty decent value, but what it also means is that there is a deterrent to not KO her. If you're the opponent and you're staring down Belmare, you can KO her and you just let the Nami mill 3, you can play a bit more defensively and make sure she doesn't get a hit in, or you can just ignore her, but if you do that, you're probably going to lose. All of these are great for us. If our opponent plays more defensively, that means things like leaving a blocker active, and this means that you have to defend against 1 less thing. This puts a lot of pressure on your opponents, as if they make a mistake in this route, you have game. If your opponent bites the bullet, cool, that's valuable trade for us. They lost Dawn to remove her, you got 3 cards from your deck, and that's worth the 4 Dawn we're playing her for. When we play Zeph, we get the bounce effect, but we don't have that deterrent. After Zeph is played, there is nothing stopping an opponent from just getting rid of him. And a lot of people don't seem to get it, and I think maybe I didn't explain it as clearly as I should have in the last video, but the value from Belmare is more than just what's on the card. It's how she affects the game state. As a Nami player, we need to be able to react appropriately to our opponent's plays, which means that we need to play more than just the game in front of us. You need to play the player.
I told you this before, I'm going to tell you again, I don't play the odds, I play the man.
When we look at piloting a Nami deck from this perspective, Belmare pushes our opponent into tough decisions. That is not even considering that Belmare is 4 Dawn for 3 cards and Zeph is 5 for 2 cards and a bounce, which is just a whole other point, but Belmare is just better, and I love you guys, but if you think differently, you're just wrong. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't make a statement that strong if this was any other leader, but I have played Nami consistently for almost a year now, and I see people misunderstand this constantly. Anyways, we run 4 Belmare because she is extremely effective against Enel and black decks like Moria and Lucci, which along with Black Yellow Luffy and Red Purple Law make up the top 5 decks in the meta. She also gives us a way to win the mirror match. So if your locals is more Red Purple Law and Black Yellow Luffy, I think you should be dropping this ratio down to 2 and instead add 2 Boodle. And lastly, we're running 4 Mihawk from starter deck 3. This is just because he's the best 2k counter outside of Kaya, and in the matches that you can play him, like Enel, you get the value from him from 1 attack. It's 5 Dawn for 2 cards from the deck. He, along with 4 copies of Belmare, make it so you can't lose the mirror match. Those 2 also give us ways of being very proactive, so opponents can't just leave us alone and build up their boards, which, if you played Nami for a while, you know that's a pretty common tactic that people like to take against us. Plus, because he's a 2k counter, you will always be able to gain some value from this card, even if you're just discarding him for counter. And you might have noticed something from this list. We're running a decent amount of the Warlord build, so why not just go with that and add in Sengoku? And you see, there are 2 main reasons. First, we'd have to run Overheat instead of Snake Dance, and that's much less helpful versus green. The active requirement means your opponent can play around Overheat by resting Kaya, and the cost 3 or less requirement means you can't bounce most of the major cards in the meta. Snake Dance trigger is also better, as you get to bounce both yours and your opponent's cards. Ultimately, the differences there are minor but important, and second, we'd lose room for Belmare. which drops our win rate versus black decks by a lot. This is a much more important distinction for me, and like I said at the beginning, the goal of this build is to make our matchups as consistent as possible. We are not able to build a way to consistently beat red-purple law, so we cannot afford to drop our win rate versus any other leaders. Let's quickly run through some of the things I didn't include that you do see in some other decks. Apis. She helps in the red-purple law matchup, but she has a costly effect and is not enough to bridge the gap. You're still going to be at a pretty big disadvantage. If your meta is very red-purple law focused, maybe you can swap Mihawk for Apis, but otherwise I don't think it's worth putting in the deck. 3000 Worlds, Gravity Blade, and Red Rock. This is a Western meta thing, but they act as dead cards in way too many matchups. They're going to stop your draw chains. The only one I would consider for this deck is Red Rock for the Bonnie matchup, as the 9C Zoro can be difficult. Bonnie is the number 6 leader in the meta, but most are not going to run 4 copies of 9C Zoro, and they have no way of searching for him. As long as they do not have it by their 10 Dawn turn, you can usually get into a good position to win the game. If not, that's a shame, but the chance of that happening is low enough that the trade-off isn't worth it, especially when the chance of us drawing it before their 10 Dawn turn is also low. Gravity Blade can be a bit helpful in the red-purple law matches, but the 7 Dawn cost is too much and leaves you vulnerable, especially when we can't bottom deck their biggest threat to us, Kid and Killer, since they're not going to drop that until they're ready to go for the kill. Slave Arrow. Great, but too situational. It works fine-ish in Kucha Pirates since you can bounce Margaret, but that 2 costs or higher does not work well in this deck. Logtown. It's bad. You make a 2-Dawn trade to cycle not to actually reduce any cards in your deck, and the same goes for any other card that just cycles. It's a bad card to include, so please do not be playing Logtown, it's terrible. Perfume Femur and Impel Down All-Stars. Without a way to search for them, thus controlling when they end up in your hand, the trade-off for the increased triggers isn't worth the dead draws in the late game. However, that's a personal opinion based on how I do my cost-benefit analysis, so you're welcome to disagree here. There are plenty of others that have success with them, especially with Impel Down All-Stars. Now when we talk about how to mulligan, this actually hasn't changed too much from the previous video. As always, you want to be going second if possible. You also want to draw as few draw 2 triggers in your hand as possible, including things like Usopp's Rubber Band that draws 1 and mills 1. This is just going to boost the probability that they end up in your life, and without Impel Down All-Stars, that probability has gone down, so it's a bit more important now. If you're going first, ideally you have a Kaya in your hand, but if it's a good hand with no Kaya, it's fine to keep. If you're going second, you want a Boodle in your hand or some combination of cards that will give you plus 4000 counter power for 2 Dawn or less. This just avoids the obvious attach 3 Dawn to leader and swing. This is especially important in the Yamato matchup. Outside of that, you want to establish a chain of cards over the next few turns. For instance, if I draw Gum Gum Gavel, Deathwink, White Snake, Bellmare, and Love Love Beam, I'd keep that. It's not the best hand, but you have an easy chain. Your 2 Dawn turn, you pass. They swing for 8k, you gavel, and you drop Bellmare. Your 4 Dawn turn, you draw a mysterious card. You pass. White Snake for another card, and Love Love if you need to for another card. Your 6 Dawn turn, you've got Deathwink and 3 other cards. By this point, you've probably got an early Deathwing play on this turn or the next for plus 2 more cards. As you get used to the deck, it's going to be easier for you to recognize these things, and if you want some more help understanding the combos, I did do a whole section on that in the last video, and I'll probably talk a bit about that in the gameplay as well. Alright, let's talk matchups. First, we're going to cover the top 10 leaders in the meta. Red-Purple Law. As I hinted throughout this video, Red-Purple Law we have an extreme disadvantage against. Because he can bottom deck our characters, we need to avoid playing any unnecessary ones. However, other than that, the key to winning lies in how well you use White Snake. The thing about Red-Purple Law is that they run a lot of 5k attackers. They also tend to prefer building up their board against us and trying to swing for a lot of small hits instead of attaching a ton of Dawn and swinging. If you can hold onto your White Snake until the moment when they've used most of their Dawn and they have a bunch of attacks ready to go, you can completely nullify their turn by just boosting yourself up to 6k. If you do this right, you save yourself about 3 to 4 cards of events every time, and that is going to add up. The other thing to know is that a bit over half of the Red-Purple Law players do run the 4-cost blocker Law that's going to discard cards from your hand. However, most of them do run only 2 to 3 copies. While you don't need to be overly cautious about hitting 7 cards in your hand, you do need to be aware of it, and you need to pay attention to when your opponent is trying to set up for that. If they're leaving you alone, or if you're at 6 cards in hand and they have the Dawn or Leader ability available, they may just be trying to trick you into discarding 2 of your cards. Lastly, Kid Killer is a problem, so you do need to be pretty conservative about taking damage. If you're careless and you get into the 2 life range, you have to deal with 7k swings every round without any Dawn attached. That's pretty hard to come back from. While this match is difficult, it is not impossible, and if you get lucky and you play well, you can do it. Enel is the exact opposite. We have such an advantage against Enel in OP-07 that it's literally one of the hardest ones out of all the leaders for Enel players, especially since we built around beating their only real strategy. For Enel to win versus Nami, they need to start building up a crazy board before they start attacking. In theory, this should prevent you from getting too many cards out of the deck, and then they can try to overwhelm you. But remember, Belmare, Boodle, and Mihawk. We're not a passive Nami deck. We have options to force Enel to start attacking, which is going to let you start using your counter events before they're ready for you. You should not be losing this matchup ever, unless you have literally the worst luck in the world, and even then I guess I'd be kinda shocked. Moria. Honestly, not much changes from my previous video here. The only real thing is that you need to start looking out for Isho. Moria players run him quite often, and you don't want to have to discard anything unnecessarily. On top of that, Mihawk is just a 2k counter here, but you should play Belmare the way you'd play a Sanji's Pilaf. Don't make yourself vulnerable playing her, but it is a Dawn investment that pays back 3 cards from the top of your deck. It is all too easy for them to KO her with Absalom, and most Moria players are gonna take that bait. Black Yellow Monkey D Luffy. Nothing has really changed for this matchup outside of having Boodle to block, but we already covered that. They still have the advantage, but you have a few turns before they're ready to start really swinging at you. Use the most of that, take the hits that you have to, and then you're gonna pull through. They don't really have a way to get rid of Crocodile unless they're running the 4-cost Kuzan, so if you get him on the field, your victory is that much closer. Lucci. Honestly, this one's not too bad. Lucci doesn't have a way to drop cards from your hand other than Isho. They also have more tech options they can run in Lucci, so as of writing this, they only run Isho about 25% of the time. The main difference you need to be aware of is that they use a lot of 6k attackers. This gives us more value to our 1-cost events, but Whitesnake is less important here. Also, it should go without saying, but don't use Crocodile here. Bonnie. We have the advantage until she plays 9-cost Zoro. Playing Belmare may seem okay, but it's likely she's just gonna get perma-stunned with Bonnie's ability and 10C Doflamingo, or your opponent just plays Basil Hawkins and blocks her. Crocodile is very helpful if you never attack with anything, so if you don't give Bonnie a chance to use her ability, she can't really remove Crocodile. If you think the Zoro is coming, I'd drop Crocodile a little bit early. Having him on the field makes the Zoro play winnable, but you need the full 9 Dawn available, so playing him after Zoro is down isn't really great. Katakuri. Really nothing changes here from the last video. The 7k Kata swings are going to drain you until they play multiple 10C Big Moms. You win if they don't get to the Big Moms fast enough. You can play Crocodile here as well as Belmare. Mihawk is going to get Gedatsu'd if you play him while you still have 4 life. Yamato. In OP-07, Yamato really just runs an aggro build, usually Wano based, and the build has a lot of draw power, but a ton of the cards are just search. Make sure you can counter the Yamato swings if he gets banished, but otherwise you should be good pretty early on. They also like to run a lot of Hody Jones and 5C Ace. The Ace doesn't really matter since they're not going to have Rush, but you should be ready for the Hody play late game. Crocodile's fine here as long as you don't open yourself up to banish double attack when you play him. Perona. So take everything I just said, but minus the double attack and banish, and give her removal instead. This is absolutely winnable on our end. You can just play it normally, but of course, no Crocodile. Boa. Boa is just an easier Sakazuki for us. She likes the bottom deck things, so only play the characters you need to. She doesn't have that many boss drops other than the Kaido and kind of the 8k Boa, so she does like to go wide instead. Use your white snakes well, and you're gonna take this one. No Crocodile though. Nami. In the mirror match, we've got it covered. The only time I have ever lost the mirror with this deck was A, because my last peel-off was in life and not in the last couple cards like I expected, and B, more importantly, I was too impatient and I started swinging with 2 Mihawk on the field instead of 3. Because we have Belmare, Mihawk, and even Crocodile, you should never be losing this. The average Nami deck runs about 2 Zeph in OP-07. You can easily stop that by just defending against a hit and KOing them the next turn. They sometimes run Apis, which is going to give them extra search, and many are still running Brick Fist. But outside of those, they have to rely on their events. An average Nami deck is going to mill about 6 cards off of 10 Dawn. If you have at least 3 Mihawk on the field before you start swinging, you match their mill on your own turn, and then you can surpass it if they try to stop the Mihawks. This is also not counting any mill that you do with Kaya or Sanji's peel-off on your own turn. On top of that, you have the Belmares. If you get 2 out, all of a sudden your opponent is under a lot of pressure. If they use their events versus the Mihawk, then they're open to the Belmare swing. which means that you can use the two of those as kind of ways to force your opponent into certain plays and to try to convince your opponent not to actually counter the Mihawks and to not mill things, which is really important. This alongside with Enel is going to be some of the easiest matchups this deck has. Now let's get into some of the more niche matchups that are still a bit difficult. Hody Jones. Yes, this is not a joke. Hody Jones specializes in resting Dawn and swinging multiple times with Daruma. This is an exceptionally difficult matchup when you run into it. To win this, you actually need to use the characters a good bit. You've got to play aggressive because you're not going to win this one defensively. Reiju. I don't have much more to say about this that I didn't in the last video. Judge still bends us over a table and let's just say we're not being served a nice meal. Crocodile is fine here though. Gear 5 Luffy is rough. Make sure you use the Boodle and you keep enough Dawn open for the double turn. Outside of that, prioritize the 4K counter events over the 2K ones. Deathwink is a big help here, and Crocodile can help bridge this gap and make this a neutral matchup. But that's all folks, so let's jump into the games. Hey there everybody, this is my face. We're going to be going over an Enel game first. Bear with me, I haven't done this kind of live commentary type thing, but we're going to just try to figure it out. So, I'm going to be trying to pause it quite frequently, but you can see that I had the chance to choose whether I wanted to go first or second. I'm going to choose second, of course, it's a Nami deck, but if you look at our opening hand, we've got Sanji's Pilaf, Deathwink, Love Beam, Mihawk, and Whitesnake. Now, this is actually a pretty bad opening hand. The reason why is even though we've got the 4K counter with Love Beam, if I were to use that on turn 3 when the Enel is going to swing for 8K, then I'm not going to have a chance to actually draw one off the Love Beam, which means later on I will have only 3 Love Beams in the deck because I wasted one early on. So I'm going to mulligan this. And so when I mulligan this, you can see we have a much better opening hand. Desert Spada, Gum Gavel, Usopp's Rubber Band, Crocodile, and Mr. 1. So looking at that, I've got Gum Gavel if I need to. I've also got the combination of Desert Spada and Rubber Band. Again, different ways to have 4K counter here. So of course, Enel is going to pass early on. I'm going to pass as well. We're going to get to the turn 3. So once that happens, you can see right here. Now he's going to swing. Now, because he's going to swing for the 8K right here, I'm actually going to go Desert Spada and Usopp instead of Gum Gavel. And the only reason I'm doing that is because it's Enel, and I know Enel is going to try to swing tall. If I were to do this versus Red Purple Law or something that goes wide, this would actually be a pretty bad play, because then I'm not going to have that later on for all the 5K attacks. However, since it's Enel, I know that I can save my Gum Gavel for later. It'll be more Dawn efficient, and if I use the Desert Spada and then the Usopp's Rubber Band, I'm going to get to choose what I'm going to mill and what I'm going to draw next turn. So you can see that if I take a look here, we have Kaya and Snake Dance. So I'm going to, of course, mill the Desert Spada, but I want to draw the Kaya, because what I'm going to do on the next turn is I want to play the Kaya, get the Snake Dance in my hand, and have that set up in case the Enel doesn't actually Gedatsu next turn. If they do Gedatsu next turn, just to KO the Kaya, then they have no Dawn available to actually attach to their leader, which means then I can use Whitesnake to just get through that turn. So you're going to see, I'm going to keep it just as is. I'm going to put it on top, and I trash the Desert Spada with Usopp's Rubber Band. So it's my turn. I'm going to draw the Kaya. I'm going to play that, grab Snake Dance, and I'm actually going to discard the Crocodile. I don't want to have the Crocodile in the Enel matchup. The reason why is they commonly are going to run Raigo. It's a 6 Dawn event. English name is Kingdom something. I don't remember the exact one. I'm sorry. It's the big ball. But basically, it's a 6-cost one that lets them kill any character on the field. So having a Crocodile out, not actually going to work that well versus Enel. So I'm going to drop Crocodile, and then I'm actually going to drop Mihawk. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to keep Mr. 1 so I can grab my Gum Gavel later, since I've already got it in my hand. Now, however, this is kind of a small difference. It wouldn't be a huge big deal if I had dropped Mr. 1 instead. And in fact, actually on the next turn, I am going to drop Mr. 1, but we'll kind of get to that when we get to that. So here, again, like we said, he could get Atsu, or he could just try to start swinging. What he's actually going to do is very interesting. He's going to drop Onami here. And by dropping Onami, he only has 3 Dawn, and again, he goes for another 8K swing, which is actually fantastic for me because we already have the Snake Dance set up. So we're going to be able to get through this with the Snake Dance. We're going to grab Kaya back to our hand, and boom, we're done with that turn. Cool. So we go to the next draw, and I've got Kaya back in hand, and I've drawn into Love Beam. So of course, I'm going to play Kaya, right? And then you can see I've got Sanji's Pilaf and Desert Spada. I'm going to drop Desert Spada. There's no need for that right now. But I'm going to drop Mr. 1 instead of Sanji's Pilaf because it's a Enel, and I know that they might try to kind of become more passive and just build up their board. So I want to have the Sanji's Pilaf in hand in case they choose that route. Then later on I can just go for the Pilaf. So that's what I'm going to end up doing right here. And then you can see right there, I used the Pilaf, and that's actually going to leave me a little bit vulnerable. The reason I did that is because they only have Onami out and they're Enel, which means that if they want to go for a big swing, I can probably take that. I am a little bit concerned if they play another Onami and then attach 5 Dawn to Enel. So that is kind of a big problem there. However, I weighed the cost benefits and I thought that maybe just going for the Pilaf now is probably fine. So they end up drawing. I forgot exactly what they do here. We'll have to see. I have small notes on the side, but we do notice that we have, okay, so this is good. So I have the Bellmare in hand, which is good. I'm going to probably end up playing that next turn. But they're just swinging 6k, which is kind of strange to me because I see that they have 6 Dawn available, and with Enel, there's not that many cards they actually run at 6 Dawn. So this is probably going to be Perospero, which I'll end up being right here. Now, because they're swinging 6k, I'm looking at my hand, I'm trying to figure out, do I want to drop Snake Dance and Bellmare? I don't really, so I'm probably going to just end up taking this. But it's kind of a tough choice. You can see I had to wait a moment, but then I drew Sanji's Pilaf off the trigger, so boom, there's 2 more cards in hand. Fantastic. And we've got a Kaya and another Love Love Beam. So there's Perospero. I draw, and now I'm here. I can play my Bellmare, and then I'm still going to have 4 Dawn available, which is great. Because we've got the Love Love Beams, we've got the Gavels, we've got a bunch of ways to defend ourselves. We're probably going to be fine. So my opponent's now at 9 Dawn. Now they could play Yamato, that would be fine, but then they would have no Dawn available to attach to any characters, so they'd swing 5k and 8k. White Snake plus any of the 4k attack things, so Gavel or Love Love Beam would take care of that. And we would still drop the 3 cards. So this is actually a bad play if they do that here. Instead, they're actually going to do something very interesting. They're going to drop Onami, and they're going to try to swing with Perospero. However, because they're not committing to this, if they had gone for all of their Dawn on the Perospero, they would have gotten this banish off. But since they're not going to commit to it and go for the 9k, I can just go for the White Snake, and then I think it was Gavel. Yeah, it was Gavel. And I dropped the Bellmare because we've already got a Bellmare on field, so there's not really any reason to do that. Okay, we're down to 24 cards at this point. That's fantastic. What I'm going to do on the next turn is I'm going to... Oh, actually, sorry. I'm a little bit ahead of myself here because they still do have 6 Dawn available. If I remember correctly, they are going to attach some Dawn and swing. I am out of cards to actually defend myself, so I'm going to have to take these hits. The good news is that they do not have actually probably any other Onamis ready to go. If they do, then they're going to have to forgo some extra Dawn, so that's kind of helpful for us. Anyway, we grab Snake Dance off the trigger. I'm going to use it to grab Kaya from my hand. I'm not going to bounce the Onamis because I don't want to give them Banish again. And then what our opponent's going to do here, they're just going to attach the 5 Dawn to Onami. And because I am kind of already taking a hit from that first one, I don't really want to take the second one here. That's more me trying to just play it a little bit safe because I want to go for the long game. But I could have just taken this. It would have been probably fine, but I end up dropping the 2 Kayas instead. Just because I don't want to take too much extra damage. So I draw into my turn. It's just drawing a Mihawk. I'm going to attach the Dawn first to Bellmare, but I'm not going to actually attack with Bellmare first. The reason I'm going to do this is I want to threaten my opponent with the Bellmare. But then I'm going to swing with Nami into the Onami, which is a weird sentence to say. But basically the point is this incentivizes your opponent not to actually drop counters, because if they do, they're losing any possible counters versus my Bellmare, because I could still attach 9 more Dawn to Bellmare and swing. So that is something that they have to kind of be aware of, which means that we're going to be able to take out this Onami pretty easily. So they're not going to end up countering. You can see we're putting them into the difficult position. They kind of have to think about it for a moment, but they're not going to end up countering. Then I'm not going to attach Dawn anymore. I'm just going to swing the 6k. They're going to be able to counter it. That's fine. Again, we're kind of trying to push them into either KOing her or leaving themselves open for us to actually get the swing. And our hand is looking pretty good at this point. We've got 3 Love Beams in the Deathwing and the Mihawk in hand. So this is already a really great position for us. 9 Dawn, fantastic. So what we'll do is I'm going to need to drop the Mihawk before I play any Love Beams, because if I don't, then I will not get the actual draw. You guys know how Love Beam works. So right now my opponent's thinking, again, I'm kind of expecting the Yamato play here, but instead they just go for the 9k, which is great, so I can just drop the Mihawk and the Love Beam, and that's beautiful. We draw into Snake Dance. That's fine. I'm not too particular about using the Snake Dance right now. I might if I need to, but if I have the chance to draw with Love Beam, I'm just going to do that. It just makes more sense. At this point, if I draw into like a Gavel, I want to have the Snake Dance ready to go to drop. And so that's kind of the reason why I wouldn't actually do that. So I Love Beam here, and then I can see that if I go for another Love Beam, then I can draw again, or I could just drop the Kaya. So I end up just going for the Love Beam, again, just to get the draw. Now I've got 3 Dawn available. They've got Onami. They could swing with Onami. If they do that, it's fine. But I'm seeing the 5 Dawn, so I'm expecting that they're just going to play Gadatsu. That's kind of my plan here, but I do think that maybe they're just a little bit afraid of this. So instead, they just swing with the Onami, 8k, and I've got Snake Dance, so I just use that to get through this. So now when we move on to the next turn, I've got Boodle, I've got Kaya, I've got Pilaf. I do not need to then go for the attached on to Belmare play again, because at this point they've got 5 cards in hand, and they already know that I can pressure them that way. I've made the threat known, so there's no point in me having to just do that, even though it's kind of a suboptimal play, but the point of me doing it in the first place was to put them in that situation, and now it's in their mind and they have to think about that for every time I actually go for the swing. They're now much more aware and afraid of the Belmare, which is important. So I'm going to swing, I'm going to be able to take out the Onami, that's great. I've got the Pilaf in hand, I want to go for that because we're at 19 cards and obviously it would make sense. Looking at this though, I've got Crocodile, Belmare, Boodle, Kaya, and Deathwing. So I've got an easy Deathwing play here, but it makes sense to just go for the Kaya, right? So I go for that, I see I've got Gavel, I'm going to drop the Croc and Belmare, I believe. Yes, yeah, so those two aren't really that helpful other than just being able to drop them from hand. But again, with Gavel and Deathwing in hand, now we're in a good spot for this combo. Alright, so I do play the Boodle just because, again, that's easy, just block. If they do want to KO that with Yamato or something, that's fine as well, which I think they end up doing that with the Gadatsu. I forgot exactly what it was. Again, you guys cut me a little bit of slack here. I am still not 100% used to actually doing these kind of things, but I wanted to do it because you guys requested it. So yep, they Gadatsu, I drop a Pilaf from that, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's fine. And then we can see they've only got 5 Dawn available. So they're going to swing 9k. I actually take this because if I had actually gone for the Gavel and the Wink here, I'd be out of other cards to defend myself. So I figured if I do this, then I can just defend against the next one and I have a better chance of drawing something I need. However, I draw Deathwing, so I'm going to use the trigger effect to grab Kaya back from the field, which is great. And then my opponent's going to swing 9k again, and now I'm just going to Gavel and Kaya. Again, same idea as being able to defend myself. Now I'm down to 12 cards. I'm always checking just to see, like, what am I actually milling, because on the sim it's a little bit harder. When you see it in person, it's easier to remember, but on the sim I have to kind of check a lot. But we're down to 12 cards, so we're actually in a pretty good spot, especially since we have the Deathwing available. They have no more swings, nothing else they can do on this turn, so they're going to have to pass. I've got Belmare in hand, I'm not going to play her. Instead, I'm just going to swing with my Belmare. Again, force them to counter a little bit. And now they're down to 3 cards, which you should be paying attention to their hand size because we want to get them into a position where we win with Belmare, if we need to. But we're down to 11 cards, so it might not even be that bad. However, at this point, we are in kind of a spot where it is going to depend on our luck because we have to draw with our Deathwing here. We still have 2 cards available from the life, but I don't want to rely on those if possible. And thankfully, we get some of the best possible draws we could have gotten here. Having another Deathwing with this much Dawn available, top tier. Okay, so this is going to go for it. I am actually going to take it because you can see that we're in a pretty good spot, so I feel like it's probably fine for me to take this instead, and I trigger off it, which is great. And now he's got 5 Dawn. He could swing, but you can see there are 4 cards in his hand, which means that we win with Belmare if he doesn't get rid of her right now, which he is going to actually end up doing that. However, by doing that, he's going to drop 3 cards, and since we have Kaya and Deathwing in hand, we win anyway. So there's really not anything that our opponent could have done at that point because of the way they played at the very end there. If they had gotten rid of Belmare earlier, they might have been able to come back from this, but by not dealing with her and just ignoring her the whole time, then he put himself into a situation where there were 2 win conditions and it was a lose-lose at the end. So now at this point, I'm going to play Kaya and then I'm just going to play Boodle and we've won the game. Because at this point, I've got 1 card left in deck. They swing, they KO Boodle, anything they do, we've already won. So at that point, I just say the GG well played, and that is the end of that game. So you can see with Enel players, it's going to be a big help for you to be using the Belmare. Hopefully it's a little bit understandable from that one, but we'll jump into the next game. Maybe I'll change outfits. I don't know. We'll see how much time I have. All right, so this one's going to be a game against Red Purple Law. So we are going to be losing this, spoilers, but this gets us pretty close and I can kind of show you how we could maybe try to navigate a Red Purple Law matchup. So unfortunately, we are forced to go first, which means I'm going to try to look for Kaya. However, I see White Snake is in my hand pretty early, so I'm actually going to keep this. This could have been a mistake. I think it might have been better to actually mulligan this in hindsight. However, I saw the White Snake and I thought it would be good for us to have that early on. I don't want that to get buried down, because if it does get buried and we get overwhelmed too early, we'll be in a really bad spot. So I end up keeping this, and then of course I'm going to have to just pass early on because I don't have anything I can actually do. And then on this turn, you can see that in my hand, I only have 2 cost events. So there's nothing I can do with that extra Dawn except attach it to Nami and swing. So I'm going to end up doing that. I do give my opponent a card. However, dropping something from the deck is pretty important, especially when things are going to get bottom decked. That's why I'm trying to go for that swing. And so I end up getting that off. That's pretty cool. I'm just going to counter out with Belmare here instead of White Snake, because again, we need this for when he goes wide. And he's got 4 Dawn, he just plays Ein, and then I think also Shachi Penguin, because that's what Red Purple Laws do, yep. And so you can see here, not much we can actually do in hand. I've got 5 Dawn though, I could have swung. However, I was thinking like, okay, at this point, there's enough stuff on the field. If I draw into like a Gum Gum Gavel or something, I do want that Dawn available. So it's kind of like a cost benefit just based on the situation. And you can see, I'm typing it in chat, but he has put us into the perfect situation for White Snake at this point. So I'm really happy. I'm excited. I'm ready to click that White Snake button. But my opponent is aware of this and they are going to just... Oh, actually, you can't even see because I'm blocking the chat, but they just pass. So that was unfortunate for me. Of course, that shows that they are aware that White Snake is a play that I can do, which is helpful kind of just to know in our head that they are aware of how Nami decks work. It's good. So I pass. I drew into Belmare. Not much I can really do with that. Unfortunately, I'm at 7 cards, and I realize right here, he could go for the blocker law. There's really nothing else I could have done at that point, really. I could have played Belmare, but Belmare would have just gone bottom decked by something like Gordon or Raise Max, depending on what they have in their hand. Obviously, I can't actually tell what's in their hand, so maybe it would have been worth it, maybe not. But at this point, I'm kind of just not trying to expect the blocker law, since again, I think I mentioned it already, not everyone actually runs it and they only run it at a couple copies. So I was kind of hoping he didn't already have it, but he did, and that was unfortunate. So we dropped the cards, but because he used all that Dawn, he didn't want to actually swing. Again, he's aware of White Snake and he's afraid of White Snake, which is why he's not going for these swings, but that's letting us get these draws, which is great. So that is going to be how we can try to get past this. We're at 6 Dawn now, though. He goes for the 5k swing. Now is the time. I'm just going to go for the White Snake. He can go again for 5k. He realized, wait a minute. And then, yay, we nullified that part of the turn. He goes for the 9k swing, but because he's at this point going for 9k, and I've got Love Beam and plenty of Dawn available, I'm going to go for the Desert Spada, drop Belmare as well. And I want to make sure what I draw is able to deal with the Queen swings if he does want to do that. So I'm going to place this just as is on top, and I draw into my Usopp's Rubber Band. And he doesn't swing, so that's cool. Probably what I could have done there, if I had expected him not to swing, is move Belmare underneath the gavel. But because I expected him to swing, I wanted to have Usopp's Rubber Band, and then go for that, drop the Belmare, and draw Gavel on the next turn. Fortunately, that didn't quite work out. So, yeah, and I just passed because there's not much I can do. I can't play characters, really, otherwise they're just going to be at bottom decks. So, 9k attack here. What would be the right play is for me to drop Belmare and Love Beam, which I should do. Yep, good. And so I've drawn to my Gavel. And again, 9k, so I'm going to Love Beam and Usopp's Rubber Band here. Oh, no. I did not do that. That's unfortunate. I really should have gone for the Love Love Beam and Usopp's Rubber Band. That is going to be a misplay right there. Because at that point, if I had done that, then he could have tried to swing, but it seems like, again, he's very aware of the White Snake, so he's not swinging at 5k, which is, again, something I should be keeping track of. Unfortunately, yeah, that was a bit of a misplay. So I go for the swing because I'm getting a little bit worried, and I see that his queens are rested, so maybe I can get the swing off. It doesn't work. That was, again, another misplay, so that's not something we should be doing. But he goes for the 10k swing here. So I'm going to Snake Dance, and then I believe Gavel? No, Usopp. Okay. And I try to just check. I drop the Gavel from that, and then 10k here, Love Love Beam, and Gavel to drop that one. And I guess now he realizes, oh, okay, I only have a couple cards in hand, so he's going to start swinging. He thinks I don't really have the White Snake, which he's right. So I drop the Mihawk, I take this, I trigger on it, so I'm going to actually send Law back to hand because I don't want to have two Deathwinks in hand at the time. I go for the Sanji's Pilaf, I swing just at the Ein just to try to get rid of it, just in case he doesn't want to counter for whatever reason. But now we've got this hand here, and we've got a White Snake, which is kind of helpful. We've also got a pretty good setup for the Deathwing. So what I do here, right, I double White Snake, and then I drop the Usopp's Rubber Band and Crocodile. And then he just passes. Again, we've nullified the rest of that turn. That's helpful, right? Keep in mind, if you're doing this at the right time, you can stop the rest of their turn. So Pilaf, it just gives me two Mihawks. Now, I drop Pilaf here because I'm thinking, okay, if he goes wide, I could just need these counters. I think that was actually a mistake in hindsight. Looking at it back here, the way my opponent has been playing, they don't really like to go wide if they can help it without attaching Dawn. So what I should have done there is drop a Mihawk and kept the Pilaf, gone for the Pilaf, and then while it would have put me in kind of a worse situation, I have the 2 life available. I could have drawn into something helpful here. However, we're down to 13 cards. I'm hoping that with the Deathlink, I'll be able to actually kind of get past this. Unfortunately, he swings 9k. Not much I can do on that specifically, except trigger on Snake Dance, grab Kaya, and send this back to hand. So another 9k hit here. I just drop my counters because I'm going to go for the Deathwink if I can. And he goes for the Ein play. I Deathwink, draw into my Love Love Beam, drop Belmare. And then, because he doesn't actually play his other character, I can go for the Love Love Beam here, and we're down to 10 cards. I'm checking just to see, like, what are the chances of me actually drawing into anything helpful. Kid Killer, unfortunately, as expected. But at this point, we are in a situation with 9 cards left in the deck, and I've got a White Snake in hand. The only way I actually win this at this point is if I draw into something like a Deathwing. So I'm checking, I see 1 Deathwing, 2 Deathwing, 3 Deathwing, 4. So I'm out of Deathwings. That's bad. So I'm thinking, okay, well, what about a Love Love Beam? But look, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm out of Love Love Beams. So we're in a very bad spot here. At this point, if I had gone for the Sanji's Pilaf instead, there would have been actually probably a chance, because at this point I would have drawn into the White Snake and the Snake Dance as well. So I go for the swing just to hopefully attempt to get rid of Kid Killer. I don't, so we've lost this game at this point. There's not really anything I can top deck that would actually save us, but you can see how we tried to navigate the game. There were a couple misplays here and there, but it's a bit of a tricky matchup for sure. So unfortunately, I'm going to end up saying good game right here, and then that's it. But you can see with Red Purple Law, a bit tricky, but we can try our best. Haha, hello, I am back. We are in different clothes because I had to work. Anyway, we're going to be doing the last game for the night. This is going to be against a Lucci player, and I'm going to be going second. So we're starting off with my opening hand is Belmare, Kaya, White Snake, Gum Gum Gavel, and Sanji's Pilaf. So this is a pretty good hand on my end. I'm going to end up keeping it. And because we're going second, that's wonderful. So on my turn, I'm just going to drop the Kaya. I have the Gum Gum Gavel, so 1 Dawn is going to be fine to defend ourselves with. So going for the Kaya is not a bad play here. However, I'm going to drop the Snake Dance and the Pilaf. We don't need 2 Pilafs in hand, and I don't expect that we're going to be able to use Snake Dance to actually bounce Kaya. Since it's Lucci, he probably has a way to KO this pretty quickly. So on his turn, he's just going to attach 3 swing. Most people just normally do that. I'm going to use the Gum Gum Gavel, and I'm going to drop Sanji's Pilaf. And I actually think, in hindsight, that's a bad play, because what I should have done is drop the Desert Spada. The reason I wanted to keep the Desert Spada in hand is because I'm thinking Lucci's got a lot of 6k attackers. If he goes wide, I need to have some way to deal with each attack. The problem with that line of thinking is that a 6k attacker, it's very easy to just attach a Dawn and make it a 7k attacker. So there was really no point to me actually doing that. I should have just kept the Sanji's peel off in hand and dropped the Spada. However, it's going to come in handy a little bit later on, so I dropped the Mr. 1, I grab my Gum Gum Gavel, and I pass. I'm expecting to see some sort of maybe like a Lucci to KO both of those, or I'm expecting to see like, I don't know, Lucci has so many different combos. I'm just expecting something's going to get KO'd here. Instead, he just plays the Sabo and he swings 5k, so I've got 3 Dawn. I could go for Desert Spada and determine what I want to draw, or I can go for White Snake. And because I have 3 Dawn available, and I know White Snake is not going to be that helpful later on, I'm actually just going to go for the White Snake. And then we can save the Spada for later. So, White Snake, I draw into Gum Gum Gavel. Cool. Now, on my next turn, I've got 6 Dawn. I'm going to play Bellmare because I've got 2 Gavels in my hand, so I feel like I'm going to be able to defend against anything. He's not really going to have any sort of rush characters. You know, Black doesn't usually run a lot of rush characters. I don't think there's actually that many they can run anyways. But basically, that's why we're going to play the Bellmare there. We're trying to bait him to actually get rid of it. So he just goes for Spandam. He's just going to do his search thing, grabs Lucci, and I'm expecting Kaya and Mr. 1 are just going to get KO'd. But I'm hoping I can bait the KO on the Bellmare, which would be wonderful. Oh no. Oh no. So, sometimes my cats like to get tripped on this, unfortunately. Anyway, so he's swinging 7k. I'm going just for the Gum Gum Gavel to block there. And I always need to double check because it's the sim, just what cards are actually in my trash. So I ended up milling 2 White Snakes there. Then he's deciding, does he want to swing with the Sabo? And he decides against it because he realizes I've got the Bellmare there. If he swings with Sabo, I could just go 10 on Bellmare, swing. So instead he just goes Lucci, KOs those 2. Fantastic. So right here, I'm just going to go for the bait. I'm attaching Lindon to Bellmare, swinging at him. I know he's going to be able to counter out of that. There's plenty of 2k counters. It's fine. But I just want to make sure I'm baiting that. And so now he's going to start swinging again here. I've got Spada and 2 Gum Gum Gavels. So it's pretty important to make sure I'm choosing the right thing to play here. And you can see that we've kind of put our opponent into a weird spot because he could just KO the Bellmare, but he really doesn't want to. So what I'm going to end up doing instead, I'm going to play the Desert Spada because I want to make sure that I'm going to draw the right card next turn, and in case I get something that I can use to draw out of my life, because I've got 5 life still available. So I'm expecting I'm going to take a hit so that I can draw. And I'm hoping that something in that life is going to give me a way to continue to draw. So if I go for Desert Spada first, then I can make sure I'm planning out my draw and knowing what I'm going to mill with Gum Gum Gavel. So I do that. We see that I've got, okay, Deathwink, Kaya, and I've got Snake Dance. It's Lucci. I don't think I'm going to be able to get off Snake Dance here, so I'm actually going to try to mill the Kaya and the Snake Dance and save the Deathwink for a little bit later. So now we're just kind of waiting to see what is he going to play. He goes for a 7k attack. I just take the hit, and you see that I draw a Deathwink. Now I could trigger that just to send the Sabo back to hand, but it'd be better to actually use it because I've got Gum Gum Gavel ×2, so I trash 1 Gum Gum Gavel for my Gum Gum Gavel. That gets rid of the Kaya and the Snake Dance off the top of my deck. Then I Deathwink to draw into my Deathwink and another card. That would be the ideal play in my head. So I'm Gum Gum Gaveling. However, he doesn't have anything he can swing with except the Spandam. So instead he just goes for the Gecko Moria. So I'm going to end up drawing into another Deathwink here, which is a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. So I draw into the Deathwink. Now, at this point, he's got a Sabo rested. I have 2 Deathwinks in hand, and I've got Bellmare right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swing for 4 Dawn on Bellmare. That leaves 6 available for the 2 Winks. I have 4 life, so I know that if I have to take a hit next turn, that's okay. So I'm going to just try again to put some more pressure on there. If he lets it go through, we're going to win anyways. So I'm just trying to say, okay, get rid of my Bellmare. And if he's going to counter out of this, he's going to have to counter a lot of cards in his hand. So I swing and boom, he lets it go through. It's over. We've won. There's basically nothing they can do at this point because we just milled 7 cards. So now what's going to end up happening is on their turn, they're going to try to get rid of Bellmare now. I'm going for the Deathwink because I just want to get the draw and there's no real reason to waste that. I've already used a lot of my Gum Gum Gavels, so I'm not expecting I'm going to have a way to mill this out of my hand this turn. So going for it right there just gives me the quick draw. However, I don't want to use the second one here. I want to wait till I have a little bit less cards in hand. But you'll see as they try to deal with the Bellmare pretty soon, I am going to take that. I get the peel off and draw 2, which is great because I draw into 2 level up beams. Beautiful. And then boom, I draw into a Gum Gum Gavel. I didn't expect to actually get that. If I had expected that, I would have actually just kept the other Deathwing in hand. But, you know, it is what it is. So he swings 5k. I'm going to take this. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to Gum Gum Gavel. Oops. Whoopsies. Anyway, we're down to 13 cards. He's going to go ahead, Sabo, KO the Bellmare, and that's going to leave me with 10 cards left in the deck. Again, we've won. There's not really much they can do to stop us at this point. It's far too late to have removed the Bellmare. At this point, he should have just left it there because now he's just making it worse for himself. So, turn 6, I've drawn into a Kaya. Obviously, I'm going to just play the Kaya. I draw into Bellmare and Snake Dance, dropping both of those. And we can see I've got 7 cards left in the deck. I was debating trying to swing into the Khalifa there, but he's got the Sabo around, and you know, I could swing, but then he's just going to block with Sabo. So there's not really any real reason to do that. So I'm expecting to Love Beam and go for the Deathwing. But since here he's swinging 9k first, I'm going to just take that one. Now he swings 9k. I Love Beam and drop the Croc. So it's fine. I draw into Kaya. And I believe at this point, I'm going to start just like taking hits pretty soon. This one I do the Deathwing just to get the 2. But since we have 2 life, and I know that we pretty much already won, I'm a little bit more okay just taking some of these hits. So he's going to swing, what was it? I think just, yeah, with Lucci, he swings 9k. I could technically block it with a Mihawk and the 2 Mihawks and the Usopp. But again, I want to just kind of get my options. If there's something stuck in my life, I want to make sure it's ready to go because we want to make sure we can close this game out with 4 life. And so we draw into Pilaf, boom. And then I believe, what did I do at this point? Yeah, so at this point, I've got 2 Usopps. It's over. It was over when the Bellmare got the swing in. So you can see, if you are able to get the Bellmare swing in, it's over. This is why I'm saying that Bellmare is such an important part of this deck, because Bellmare versus any black deck like the Lucci, I'm able to push them into trying to KO them. But you saw that early on, and I'm going to actually scroll back to that point, right? It was about... was it here? Yeah, I think it was here. You can see that on his turn, he's trying to figure out what to do with the Bellmare. I have put him into a situation where he doesn't want to KO the Bellmare. But because we had an opening later, right? If we skip back over here, like he got greedy, he went for the Sabo swing. And because he went for the Sabo swing without removing the Bellmare, I saw that in his hand, he only had the 5 cards. And so I figured, okay, I'm putting him into a position where he's either dropping a lot of cards to counter this, and then I'm not really losing that much, because again, I kept enough Dawn available for my 2 Deathwings, and I had the life to deal with that. Or I'm putting myself into the situation where I win. So that's kind of the point of Bellmare versus Zeph. If this was Zeph, it would have just been gone the next turn. There's no point in keeping it around. So you can kind of see what I was trying to explain earlier on. Hopefully it's better with a little bit of a visual. Anyway, all that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you made it through, I don't know how long this has been now, because it's 3 different games and stuff, but hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, Nami is my favorite character. Hopefully it'll help you become the best Nami you can be, basically. Other than that, my name is Waffles the Asian Yen Bear. Hope you have a good day, a good week, good life, and I'm gonna be king of the potatoes. I don't know. I don't have a joke ready. I didn't write a joke down. I'm sorry. Anyway, bye.